Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, well, Seattle, yes, another great day unfolded on Sunday. We have loads of pictures and reports from the latest iteration of the Khalistan referendum. We have a rather curious, if not slightly shocking, strategic pivot from Sikhs for Justice in terms of pushing the Khalistan movement forward. That may not be the best of ideas. Do stay tuned to find out what that's all about. In Canada, has the head of the RCMP been pressured by Mark Carney to completely change his mind about India being behind transnational oppression? Well, in his latest incredible interview, he does a complete U-turn, completely contradicting his previous position, claiming India was a clear and present threat to Canadian Sikhs. Is this the ultimate Canadian betrayal? And we have the wonderful story of a modern Sikh warrior, the Saint Lion, Gurdishan Mangat, and his journey to becoming a world champion in the most grueling sport on the planet. All this and more on today's show. And of course, we'll take a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show, which have been filling up beneath the video. So thank you, as always, to our wonderful audience for that. Right, let's get underway. And yes, Seattle, what a wonderful day Sunday was. And we've got some pictures. Let me show you a few pictures. There's an eagle of some description flying over. And it's supposed to be a sign of good luck, a sign of good fortune, having a hawk or a bird of prey like that flying over as the gathered crowds appreciated. So, but ultimately, yes, what a great day it was Sunday. I keep saying yesterday. Great day it was in Seattle on Sunday, March the 22nd. The city became the latest stage for this great Khalistan referendum. Now, of course, this is part of this global multi-phase voting process organised by Sikhs for Justice to obviously gauge support for an independent Sikh sovereign nation. Now, the atmosphere in Seattle was nothing short of exciting, enthusiastic, electric. Early reports coming through indicate a pretty substantial turnout. The number I'm seeing across social media at the moment is around 27,000. And people started arriving at City Hall Park as early as 9 a.m. And we saw families, elders, a remarkably high number of young American-born Sikhs all turned up as well, all gathered to cast their ballots on, obviously, the single powerful question: should Indian-governed Punjab be an independent country? Well, I think we can probably guess and anticipate what most of those people there were voting for, judging by that wonderful sea of yellow flags. And, of course, final numbers are still being tabulated by the Commission, but at the moment, as I say, social media is reporting around about 27,000. I mean, you look at the long queues stretching through the park, the vibrant displays of yellow and blue. It does speak volumes about the community's engagement with this wonderful referendum. The mood, as always, peaceful but firm determination. And of course, for many older voters in the crowds there, this was a day rooted in the memory of what they've experienced firsthand, many of them, and certainly secondhand through other family members. But for the younger generation, it was, of course, a moment to assert their identity and advocate for the right of this basic human right for self-determination. It's important also to address, as I often do when we have these discussions about the referenda, is to talk about how they're actually conducted. Now, it's very easy for critics to point to these and say, look, they're unofficial, they're non-binding. However, Sikhs for Justice have done a great job in organising these things, because what they've done, they've gone to great lengths to ensure the whole process mirrors, as much as is practically possible, the standards of a formal democratic election. In other words, an official referendum, to build international legitimacy. So it's very easy for critics, it's unofficial, it's unbinding. But the organisers can show organisations like the United Nations and other legal bodies that they are now engaging with, say, look, we're holding this referendum. You try and pick apart how unofficial it is, because we can prove we've gone through every normal democratic hoop and legal process to ensure that this actually is conducted properly. There are no holes in the way these referenda have been conducted in terms of the democratic process. And The vote, as all of them, has been overseen by the Punjab Referendum Commission, the PRC. This is an independent, non-aligned panel of experts on direct democracy. And this commission is responsible for monitoring everything from voter eligibility and registration itself to the actual balloting and final tabulation. And so the balloting on the day and then getting the results together officially. And by bringing in these independent observers, Sikhs for Justice are trying then, of course, to present this credible case to the UN, seeking an official UN-supervised referendum in Punjab in the future. That's really what it's really all about. Obviously, how is the rest of the world looking at this, and specifically India? I think a lot of it's pretty predictable. Well, the international media it's had, I would say, a fairly varied amount of coverage. It's Seattle, it's not New York, Washington, or some of the more high-profile locations. But it has been covered to some degree by CNN, for example, The Independent here in the UK. They sort of previously covered these referenda. But what they have, the sort of consistent message where it has been covered in Western media is very much the whole diaspora voting has been a complete thorn in India's side. Obviously, and more importantly, reflecting deep divisions over India's so-called nationhood. So again, it's these referenda, even if they're non-binding, they're actually still sending a message out to the global audience that India clearly isn't as united as Narendra Modi and the BJP and the Brahmins effectively are trying to present to the world. And in Seattle over the weekend, we saw regional news outlets obviously picking up the story. They were heavily on it and noting what they noted. Well, the vote is symbolic. The sheer scale of the diaspora's participation, these huge crowds, does make it a movement that cannot be dismissed as a fringe movement, as the Indian media are trying to do and have done in the past. And of course, the reaction of the Indian media and the Indian government tells a very different story, as it always does. True to form, most mainstream Indian outlets have characterised the event as a gathering of extremists, a gathering of separatists. And of course, the word terrorist sort of pops up once or twice, of course, predictably. And they're all backed by anti-India forces. Really? I mean, again, I'm a case in point. I'm backing the Khalistan referendum, but I'm totally and utterly pro-India. I love India. I love its people. As I always say, I love its cultures, etc. But I don't love its anti-democratic government and its ruling class. That's the anti that I and many, many others around the world represent. Now, the Indian government has consistently pressured Western nations, obviously like the US, Canada, to block these referenda, labelling them as a threat to India's territorial integrity. It just doesn't work, though. I mean, New Delhi has previously banned Sikhs for Justice under anti-terror laws, accusing the group and Gurpreet Singh Puri himself of espousing secessionism, is what they say. Doesn't make them a terrorist organisation, but there you go. But as we saw yesterday, the US government carries on saying such activities are a protected exercise of free speech, and in the US under the First Amendment. This is what we do in democratic nations. We allow free speech, we allow democratic protest, referenda, whatever you want. You're allowed to take to the streets and protest and advocate for things like Khalistan. And it does create, again, as always, a fascinating geopolitical tension. A peaceful democratic exercise in American City becomes a major point of friction with a key global ally. India hates it, and America says, sorry, but this is what we do in a democracy. You're supposed to be a democracy. As we look at the results from previous phases, at least 200,000 votes in California, hundreds of thousands more across Canada, Australia, the UK. It's very clear that Seattle was just yet another brick in a much bigger wall. And whether you see this as just simply a symbolic gesture or the beginning of a genuine path towards sovereignty, the determination up there in Seattle, as you can see, you can't ignore this strong, this powerful movement, this strong feeling that is there in the diaspora. And I saw on social media several comments, whoa, Khalistan movement, it's not in India, it's all in the diaspora. But as I keep saying, it's in the diaspora because they can't do this in the Punjab. If they did this in the Punjab, they'd end up in jail. Anyway, the results from Seattle will be combined, obviously, with all those from the other referenda, and well, we'll wait and see. But the one, obviously, that we're all still looking for is the one in Punjab. That's the key. When will there be a referendum in Punjab? Well, Sikhs for Justice, I'm sure, are working behind the scenes to try and secure that. But talking of Sikhs for Justice, I just want to turn now to, this is a strange one. This is a post from Sikhs for Justice yesterday or a couple of days ago. They talked about the referendum, which unsurprisingly they're very happy about. Happy with the turnout, good turnout. Oh, actually, yeah, here you go, 27,000 or more. So Sikhs for Justice themselves have said 27,000 on their Instagram account. But Gurpreet Singh Pannoon has issued a new statement, and it's rather interesting. He says, Sikhs for Justice to approach the United Nations Security Council to allow Sikhs in Punjab to initiate defensive armed resistance in the face of the Modi regime's assassination of Khalistan referendum activists. And he says, Gurpreet Singh Pannoon says, India's Modi is using bullets to kill the ballot. So what he said is, he said on the 18th of October 2026, it refers to, if I understand this correctly, he's calling for a referendum, and a referendum question that will be held in Alberta in Canada. Is defensive armed resistance justified when India is assassinating Khalistan referendum activists in Canada, US and the United Kingdom? So I was a little bit taken aback when I read this, because it really is quite provocative. And it's a really huge change, a pivot in strategy, and it's dangerous, and it worries me, this. Essentially, for years, the mantra of Sikhs for Justice and its legal counsel, Gurpreet Singh Pannoon, has been ballots, not bullets. That was a clever, legally grounded framing designed to appeal to Western democratic sensibilities and distinguish the modern movement from that armed insurgency back in the 80s and 90s, which, again, was a defensive armed struggle against the mass murders of the Indian state of young Sikhs. But what he calls unprecedented Indian transnational oppression, he's now speaking of a right to a defensive struggle. Okay, well, let's look at the context of this. It's obviously not happening in a vacuum. We've seen the unsealed US indictments alleging a murder-for-hire plot against, well, Pannoon himself on American soil. We've seen the assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Canada. So from Sikhs for Justice perspective, the ballot is being met not with a counter-argument, but of course with assassins' bullets, with violence, with state-sponsored terrorism from India. So in this new statement, Pannoon is arguing that when a state uses lethal extrajudicial force to suppress a peaceful democratic process, the community then has a natural and what he claims is a legal right to defend itself. So in this, he seems to be testing the waters. Is it still ballots, not bullets, if the other side refuses to acknowledge the ballot? So how significant is this? Well, to put it bluntly, it's a watershed moment. It's a really big moment. Even asking this question, it's quite dangerous, as I said. For the last 5 years, the referendum has gained traction precisely because it stayed within the lines of international law and local domestic statutes in the US, UK and Canada. By even hinting at a defensive, violent struggle, Sikhs for Justice are risking basically handing the Indian government the very ammunition it's been seeking for years. The Indian government has spent years saying Khalistan is a terrorist. And we can validly say they are not terrorists, it's ballots, not bullets. We have been a peaceful movement, a democratic movement. Is Sikhs for Justice potentially threatening to undermine that whole powerful pillar, that defensive pillar against India's transnational oppression, the legal, democratic foundation that was working? Well, the question is it justified? And this is the question that really has sort of got people talking. Proponents are arguing that self-defense is a recognised principle. If activists are being hunted globally by intelligence agencies, then they can't be expected to walk into the crosshairs of a sniper's rifle or down the sights of an assassin's gun with only a paper ballot as a shield. Ballots, not bullets. It's all very well if there's 5 guys with guns shooting you. But there is a massive but here. From a strategic standpoint, many analysts, and indeed many within the Sikh community, think that this might be a trap. The good work that's been done so far has been in winning the battle of perception in the West. The moment the word violence, or struggle even, enters the frame, the movement risks being reclassified from a civil rights and self-determination movement, a peaceful democratic movement, to a security threat in the eyes of Western countries like the US State Department or the Canadian RCMP. And if this shift is realised, it could totally undermine the huge, years-long efforts to build a democratic mandate. It plays directly into the narrative of the Indian media, which has always portrayed Sikhs for Justice and the Khalistan movement as a terrorist organisation, despite the lack of violent incidents associated with anything that we see the Khalistan movement involved in here in the West. So you've got to ask, does this Sikhs for Justice statement, sorry, let me, I beg your pardon, I haven't been showing this statement, there you go, that's his statement. As I say, does this statement from Sikhs for Justice help the cause of Khalistan, or will it potentially isolate it? If the movement loses its whole peaceful label, it loses its primary main shield against things like extradition and suppression and legal attacks from everybody in the West. It's a huge gamble by Panoon. And maybe it comes in the context that he personally has been under threat. His life is under threat from Indian assassins. So maybe that's why it's generated this whole sort of idea. But it could have massive ramifications, this. And I do hope this just sort of quietly goes away, because there can be no association between the Khalistan movement and anything to do with violence or a violent struggle, even in a defensive frame. Because yes, we all have a right to self-defense, but as a movement, you cannot advocate any sort of violence. Unfortunately, you do have to wave your paper ballots in the sights of assassins' guns, because that, unfortunately, is the only way we will win this. It's all about, sadly, if you have to sacrifice for yourself for the cause, that is sacrifices that are well made, because this cause has made so much progress in the last few years compared to the 1980s and 1990s. In the 1980s and 1990s, it was a huge, violent, defensive struggle against the mass onslaught of the Indian state, who were murdering tens of thousands of Sikhs. So there was a violent struggle in defence, but that was lost. You cannot win violently. And certainly here in the West, you cannot fight violently. And even in Punjab, history has shown you cannot win by violence. The Indian state, firstly, is too huge and well-resourced. You cannot beat the Indian state in any way through any form of physical violence. It's just an impossibility. The way that the Khalistan movement is winning is through peaceful democratic process. Amritpal Singh and all his supporters are suffering directly through the advocacy of Khalistan, but in their suffering, they have alerted the world's attention to the movement. And the only way Khalistan is going to happen is through global advocacy, through global endorsement, through global legal instruments that will make it happen, that will pressure India into firstly holding the referendum, and secondly, as and when that result is a positive yes for Khalistan, is enforcing that democratic right. That is the only way Khalistan's going to happen. And it's happening. We're winning. We're winning this battle. Don't go and blow it by even mentioning violence. As I say, I'm a little bit surprised and shocked by Panoon's language here. And again, when we look at this word struggle, the word struggle does resonate so deeply. Of course, there's a lot of history behind it. It refers back to June 1984, Operation Blue Star. It refers back to the genocide in October, November that year. And anyway, what he's actually said in this press release, or in his Instagram account, he has actually referred at the end to the 16th of August this year, confronting India's Independence Day, 16th of August. There will be a Khalistan referendum, a new referendum. The next referendum, presumably, will be in Indiana, and he's dedicated it to Shahid Satnam Kaur, 8 years old, and Shahid Waheguru Kaur, 6 years old, who tied grenades to their bodies to blow up Indian tanks during the 1984 attack on the Darbar Sahib. Yeah, I mean, again, it's a story of Shahidi, of martyrdom, 2 young Sikhs who allegedly, I didn't know this story, but they allegedly tied grenades themselves and launched themselves at those Indian tanks during Operation Blue Star to try and take 2 tanks out. I mean, the courage behind that of 2 youngsters is terrifying. But again, yeah, that was a very, very different context, but you cannot equate that to certainly defensive actions fighting India over the Khalistan movement. It's a whole different battle, this. So anyway, so I think when Panoon is speaking of a defensive struggle today, he's trying to invoke these sorts of memories of Operation Blue Star, of the 1980s and the 1990s. And for many of these martyrs, and of course the greatest martyr of all, arguably, is the gentleman who watches over me, over my shoulder. Would they agree to an armed struggle in Punjab now? I don't know. I think these guys, they knew what was right at any given time. I'm sure they would know now is not the time. Now that we're winning this battle, now is not the time to take up arms. It would be a huge, huge mistake. Anyway, well, we'll see. So I'm just going to keep an eye on that and just, he's claiming there's going to be a referendum about it. And certainly, if he does hold a referendum about that very question, about is defensive armed resistance justified, I think, I'll be very clear, and I'll say it now. I think, no, it absolutely is not. We unfortunately, we must take the violence on the chin, metaphorically speaking and literally speaking, because we're winning. This is the only way that Khalistan can be delivered, peacefully, democratically. And the more violence that India uses, the more it's losing that battle, it's losing that war. Again, this is why the Khalistan movement is winning, because it is peaceful and democratic. It's why India is losing the argument on the global stage, because it is using violence, intimidation, and illegal behaviour to do it. It's very simple. So, anyway, as I say, I'll keep an eye on that one. It's quite scary. Right, I'm going to move on now to something that's, I have to say, equally scary and very concerning. North of the border, just north of the border, in Canada. I want to play you a video. This is Mike Duhem. He's the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Commissioner. And he appeared on camera several months ago in an interview, which I did show at the time. We talked at great length about, where he basically very clearly said that we should be concerned about India's transnational oppression, because Sikhs in Canada are clearly being targeted by Indian transnational oppression. Now, let me play you a video of an interview he did just a day or 2 ago. And as I say, this is this is quite concerning. Here we go. Oh, beg your pardon. It would help if we had some noise. There we go. Right, let me start it again for you. Right, so Mike Duhem, Commissioner for the RCMP.
In the files that we have that involves transnational repression, we're not seeing any connection right now with any foreign entity. So, based on the criminal information, the investigation that we have presently.
So am I to interpret that? I just want to be clear, because you know that there's a lot of interest in this, that there is no threat to the public safety of Canadians vis-a-vis agents of the government of India based on the intelligence and the information you have before yourself?
I'm saying that based on the totality of the files that we have when it comes to foreign interference or transnational repression, what we have in our holdings is we have people that are intimidating people, harassing people, but connecting the dots to a foreign entity, regardless of the country, we don't have that.
So, I mean, wow, okay. So there he is, making a series of remarks that actually have left pretty much the whole community pretty stunned and shocked. So this interview has actually gone viral. What he's stating is that the RCMP is not seeing any connection right now between current transnational repression in Canada and any foreign entity, and specifically, obviously, referring to India. Now, this is staggering. Let's remember, as I just mentioned, last year, this same RCMP that he's chief of was publicly accusing Indian diplomats and consular officials of being directly linked to homicides, extortions, and clandestine activities on Canadian soil. Now, he's here in this interview saying that the dots aren't being connected anymore. What? Really? So, unsurprisingly, the reaction from the Sikh community was immediate. It was visceral. The World Sikh Organisation, as reported, for example, in the Sikh CSAT News, the WSO of Canada has categorically rejected his assessment, calling it, in their words, utterly false and disconnected from reality. And, you know, they're not alone in that. And they're not just speaking in the abstract here. I mean, only, was it 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? The case of Maninder Singh, a prominent activist who's appeared regularly on this show, in stuff I've shown, where he's been advocating for the Khalistan movement. So this is well within this time frame that Mike Durham's talking about when he's saying things are quieted down, they can't join the dots. The very same Vancouver police issued Maninder Singh with a duty to warn notice. And to his family, remember, to his wife and children. Now, that wasn't a routine update. It was, for the first time, the warning explicitly extended to his wife and children, citing a credible and imminent threat to their lives. That wasn't just regurgitating some old threat to a duty to warn notice. This is a new one, which means there must be fresh intelligence where his wife and children, their lives are under threat. So, what? You know, as I say, the only reaction to this is, what the hell? And as the World Sikh Organisation rightly asks, how can the RCMP Commissioner claim there is no evidence of ongoing foreign-linked repression when activists are literally being told by police just days earlier that their families are in India's crosshairs? And Sikhs for Justice has gone a step further. And they've actually labelled it as a political cover-up, designed, obviously, to pave the way for a smooth diplomatic reset. Which, of course, then brings us to the big elephant in the room. It's Prime Minister Mark Carney and his aggressive push for a comprehensive trade deal with India. So, this probably is where the truth lies. We know that since taking office, Carney has made no secret of his desire to turn the page on the tensions of the Trudeau era with India. We've seen him meeting Prime Minister Modi multiple times, signing multi-billion dollars deals for uranium, critical minerals, and he's set his sights on a massive free trade agreement by the end of this year. So, if we look at the timeline then, before Carney even touched down in Delhi last month, senior government officials in Canada were already briefing reporters, on the condition of anonymity of course, that they were confident Indian interference had stopped. With one official even saying, if you remember, I really don't think we'd be taking this trip if we thought these kind of activities were continuing. Well, I mean, does that sound like a security assessment, or does it sound like a political prerequisite? It's all a bit convenient, isn't it? You start we start to join the dots of what has gone on behind the scenes, it does really raise a very uncomfortable question. Is the RCMP being pressured to bury the threat of India to facilitate these trade deals? Now, we know how much pressure a government can exert when billions of dollars in trade and energy security are at stake. So if the RCMP continues to link the Indian government to violence in Canada, that trade deal obviously becomes politically radioactive. There's just no chance it could happen. But if magically that link disappears into a fog of what he calls unconnected dots, well, then the path between Mumbai and Delhi and Ontario is cleared, isn't it? And even members of Carney's own party are starting to say, hang on a second, they're smelling a rat, as we say in English. Liberal MP, for example, Sukh Dhaliwal, has publicly condemned these government briefings. And he said that they contradict everything he's seeing on the ground in his own constituency. And he called the official remarks totally irresponsible. And also said that they fly in the face of recent assessments from CSIS, the Canadian Intelligence Services, which still lists India as a primary perpetrator of foreign interference. So what can we conclude from all this? I mean, are we witnessing a genuine sudden cessation of all Indian intelligence activity in Canada? Really? Has India really completely said, no, we're not doing any more transnational oppression, it's over, it's finished? Or are we actually instead seeing the pragmatism that Carney likes to talk of? He spoke of in Mumbai, the pragmatism, the practicality, the idea of taking the world as it is. Remember, I did that piece about his essay where he talked about variable geometry. Well, old alliances, let's forget old alliances. We're drawing up new alliances with people that we see fit with any given issue. In other words, he's basically going to cherry pick what works for what works for the globalists. So this has Carney's hands all over it. But for the Sikh community, this isn't about pragmatism. It's more like a massive betrayal of Canadian sovereignty, when the rule of law, as represented by Mike Duhem, becomes a variable that can be adjusted to suit a trade balance. So when the rule of law becomes that variable that can be just changed at will, everyone's at risk. Civilization basically breaks down. It creates anarchy. And if the Canadian government is indeed misleading the public or leaning on the RCMP, pressuring people like Mike Duhem to downplay threats just to secure signatures on a trade deal, then the cost of those generational opportunities that Carney speaks of will just ultimately be paid in Canadian blood, particularly the blood of Sikhs and Khalistanis. Now, the World Sikh Organisation and other organisations are now, unsurprisingly, demanding a full independent inquiry and more transparency. They're not going to go quietly on this, and neither, frankly, will we. I mean, this interview with Duhem, I have to say, if I read body language, I'm no expert, but when I watched this interview and I saw Mike Duhem speaking, I have to say, you can almost see him saying it through gritted teeth. This is perception, this isn't fact, just to highlight this point. This is my interpretation of this interview. He's almost squirming in his seat as he said this. He's saying it with body language that is just so tight and uncomfortable that I sense he's very uncomfortable saying this, which to me implies that he actually doesn't believe what he's saying. Now, you and I know he's lying through his teeth, is very likely is lying through his teeth. He knows because CSIS, his own intelligence agencies, have been advising him and his team what's going on the ground, that Indian operatives are active on Canadian soil, that Sikhs on a daily basis are being attacked, harassed, exploited, extorted, etc. on Canadian soil. It is happening every single day. As that MP said, Duham's statement contradicts everything he is seeing on the ground in his own constituency. So even Mike Duham probably knows he's talking nonsense, which again implies, well, why Mark Carney? Clearly, we see it all over. It happens here in the UK. Politicians pressure state entities like law enforcement. We see it here, the pressure on when we see the police attacking our Sikh community in the Midlands, as has happened in the past, particularly in 2017. Politicians, pressure from India, pressure the politicians, who in turn pressure law enforcement to target Sikhs and Khalistanis. We've experienced it here in the UK unambiguously. Some of my guests on my podcast have talked directly about how they have been harassed by British police under pressure from our politicians. Well, here we are in Canada. Carney and his globalist team want to do deals with Modi and his billionaire mates. There's a lot of billions of dollars at stake here. So clearly there has been a huge amount of pressure applied to Mike Duham, and I sense as he sits there squirming in his seat, look at his body language. He's just not comfortable. He was a lot more comfortable in his interview last year when he talked about India being behind transnational oppression, and there he just, as I say, he just doesn't look happy saying what he's saying. It stinks. Let me know your thoughts on that, because as I say, you know my thoughts. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. If I'm wrong, it's great. It means India is no longer targeting Khalistanis in Canada. But I think you and I know the truth behind that one. You're right. Let's move on to my final story. This is a story I'm happy to bring. A good news story. This is the Saint Lion. This is the story of Khalistan Mangat and his journey to becoming a world champion, as I said in the introduction, in probably one of the most grueling sports on the planet. Just recently, it was announced that this gentleman, Khalistan Mangat, has turned years of raw backstage footage of his rise through the ranks of mixed martial arts into, apparently, a compelling new documentary that's on Amazon. It's not just your average sports movie. It's been described as a blueprint for resilience. Of course it is. It needs to be pretty robust and resilient as an MMA fighter. But more importantly, it's a real testament to the Sikh spirit in a 21st century arena. Now, for those of you who might not follow the combat sports world, MMA, mixed martial arts, it's often described as the ultimate test of human capability. I'm going to play in the background now. This is Khalistan, his picture. I'm going to play in the background for you. This is actually is a YouTube documentary. As I'm talking to you about this, this is a YouTube documentary about this chap. Just so you can have some pictures and you know who I'm talking about. MMA, as I'm talking about, it is often described as the ultimate test. It combines techniques from all sorts of different backgrounds: boxing, wrestling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai. I've never been able to pronounce that correctly. But it combines them all into a single high-intensity discipline. It's a sport where there's basically nowhere to hide. You are tested physically, mentally, even spiritually, every single second that you're inside that cage. Now, his story is quite interesting. His story, his path to his huge success, it wasn't paved with natural athleticism. As growing up, he grew up as a child of Indian immigrants in a small Canadian town. He's based in Canada. He was relentlessly bullied. He had a stutter, no self-confidence, obviously, and he describes himself in his own words, a weak academic kid who was often a target of bullies. But there was a bit more of a deeper personal layer to his motivation to get him to where he got to. And he shared it in this documentary that I'm showing you now. He spoke quite candidly about a time when he was exhausted all the time, not from training, but from the emotional toil of faking a smile, as he says, and putting on a mask of happiness for the world. But the cause of his deepest pain, and actually the catalyst for his greatest strength, was the loss of his elder cousin, who'd been his guide, his protector during those awful years when he was young and being bullied. And when his cousin died, of course, his world fell apart. So he found himself in this whole cycle of grief and sadness and loneliness that he obviously couldn't express. His life was spiraling downwards. So incredibly, it turned out it was a familiar face from his past that helped him on that road to recovery. He remembered watching a legendary MMA fighter, mixed martial arts fighter, Vitor Belfort on TV with his cousin. Now, Belfort had famously shared his own public grief after kidnapping of his sister, and that became a bit of a symbol for Mangat. He realised through the discipline of martial arts, he could transform his own internal pain into an external force for good. And when you see a Mangat, what he often does is when he enters this cage, the MMA cage, he prays. And he's praying not obviously just to win, he's honouring that bond to his cousin. And he's showing us that this warrior spirit, this is really what it's all about, the warrior spirit. It's not just about the ability to fight and strike successfully. It's about the courage to be vulnerable, to heal, and to carry the memories of those that we've lost into every battle that you then face going forwards. And the turning point for him particularly, it came when he was in his 20s. It wasn't just about learning how to punch or fight or kick or whatever. But for him, it was a spiritual awakening. He realised that the warrior he was searching for wasn't someone else. It was a legacy already encoded in his own DNA. And this actually is really the crucial element of this whole story, is the connection between martial arts and Sikhi. So to understand this whole concept of the Saint Lion, as he's called, that is inherently embodied in the concept of Sant Sipahi, the Saint Soldier. Of course, MMA is all about, it's the 21st century manifestation of the martial arts, the military prowess of Sikhi. In Sikh history, the transition to a martial community wasn't about aggression or violence or whatever. It was about the righteous use of force. Now, Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji, who donned the two swords of Miri and Piri, all the way through to Guru Gobind Singh Ji, who founded the Khalsa, the final human guru. Martial prowess, Shastra Vidya, was made an integral part of Sikh identity. So this Shastra Vidya, this martial prowess, is, as I say, embedded into Sikh identity. It's what Sikhs essentially are all about from obviously a martial arts perspective. It is a tool to defend the defenceless and stand against tyranny. Always, I talk about what I've learned about Sikhi is essentially its primary foundation is to defend the defenceless, is to stand up to oppression, stand up against tyranny. But to do that, you of course need to be capable. And this is where the military prowess that has now evolved into the martial arts prowess comes from. You can see, again, why MMA is so infused in the concept of Sikhi and this Shastra Vidya, martial prowess. And Manga often speaks about how he sees the MMA cage as his modern-day battlefield. He uses these military terms. It's his battlefield. And when he steps into that cage, he carries the weight of the shaheeds, the warriors of the past. He's not just fighting to win a belt or a prize or a trophy. He's fighting, as he says, to show the world that the Sikh warrior spirit is alive, it's disciplined, and it's capable of reaching the absolute pinnacle of global sport. It's a fantastic motivation. And the importance can't be overstated. And in particular in a time when many of the young, our youth, feel disconnected from their roots, Punjabi roots, Sikh roots even, he himself is providing an example, a bridge. He's showing that being a saint lion means balancing the humility and peace of a saint with the courage and strength of a lion. The very essence of the names Kaur and Singh. Anyway, this documentary that's going to be released on Amazon shortly, it's not just actually a highlight reel, it's a lot more than that. It's basically, it peels back all these layers. It talks about his motivation. It's a real raw look at the sacrifices, the mental health struggles that he's gone through. We talk a lot on Perspectives about mental health struggles. And of course, it talks a lot about the obsession that's necessary to break through those barriers. It really is. It's a story for anyone who's ever been told that they weren't enough. And Manga he's there on the global stage, representing the diaspora. He's reminding us that the good work that we often talk about on this show isn't just done in voting booths or political offices. It's also done in other arenas, literally other arenas. It's done in the gym, in the classroom. It's done right across educating our children. It's in every arena where a Sikh chooses to excel. So do keep an eye out for this documentary. As I say, it's on Amazon. If you've got access to Amazon, it does look fascinating. I have no particular specific interest in MMA, but more importantly, it is a real insight into why the warrior spirit is such an important part of being a Sikh, and why martial arts is just this modern manifestation that represents such a rich, deep, heroic heritage of the Sikh people. It really is. It's a source of pride for Sikhs globally, this single man success. So there you go. Fascinating. Amazon Title Fight, apparently it's called. So there you go. Right, let's move on to our comments column. Okay, thank you, as always, to my wonderful audience for all your contributions. Always gratefully received, and some lovely comments, as always. Some fascinating comments, as always. TC, hello TC, starts us off today. This was my podcast with Dr. Bakshish Singh Sandhu. We talked about Hindu-Sikh unity. No, we didn't. I beg your pardon. That was Dr. Grail's podcast. This is the day before. This is a podcast where actually we talked about the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, within which the Commission recommended that, made very several powerful recommendations, many of which included boycotting members of the RSS and RAW, etc., etc. But as TC says, Sikhs are not Hindus. They are diametrically opposed to conversions, forced conversions. Yes, of course, this report does refer a lot how the law has been weaponised by the Brahmanical elite of India, the Hindutva forces, and of course the RSS. And one of those laws that they are weaponising is the forced conversion laws. As you rightly say, TC, it's not compliant in any way with anything that Sikhs believe in. It's obscene and vulgar. It is. I would say that's the absolute understatement. It's undemocratic. It flies in the face of anything that represents morality or ethics or anything. As I've said, and do watch that podcast. I mean, one simple fact is, in certain states in India, if you want to change your religion, if you decide that you don't believe in one God, but you want to believe in another God, you then have to give the government 2 months' notice that you are changing your beliefs. I mean, I'm laughing because it just sounds unbelievable. It's ridiculous. It's none of the government's business what goes on in your own head. That's 1984 George Orwell stuff. But that's modern day India for you. You've got to tell the government if you suddenly decide you believe in a different God, if your religious beliefs change. Bobby Singh, it'll be naive of Trump to do anything other than boycotting the RSS and any members of the Research and Analysis Wing. Yeah, it would be. But this was a lot of the discussion in the podcast. Will the Trump administration do anything about it? That is the big question. We don't know. Cam KZ says, Hindutva fanaticism will certainly lead to the disintegration of India. Yeah, it will. It is. It's already happening. As I talk about, ironically, as I keep saying, if Hindutva want their Hindu Rashtra, I say bring it on. Have your Hindu Rashtra. Because by definition, that will break India up. Because Muslims don't want to be Hindus. They don't want to be part of a Hindu Rashtra. So if you want a Hindu Rashtra, you've got to expel Muslims. But where are they going to go? They want their own land. So you're going to have to divide up a bit for the Muslims, a bit for Sikhs, a bit for Christians, a bit for the Jains, maybe even a bit for the Buddhists that you drove out, etc., etc. So ultimately, their philosophy, just almost by definition, will lead to the disintegration of India. You're absolutely right, Cam KZ. Harpreet Kaur, this is a big point, actually, and I'm going to read through this because you bring out some good points here. And the theme is very simple. everything that a Sikh does that's good gets stolen by the Indian state and Hindutva. They take credit for it. As you rightly say, Punjabi music's used in Hindu films. They use Sikh warriors and soldiers as characters for their Bollywood movies. They keep using the pag, a Sikh head wrap, in Bollywood movies. They don't respect it. There's Gurdwaras all over India where anybody can go, and as you say, they're filled up with the more non-Sikhs and Sikhs taking advantage of Langar and Seva, etc. But that's okay, because they then go and attack the same Gurdwaras, the ones that have actually been generous and gifting them with Langar, etc. Gurdwaras attacked in Rajasthan. There's disrespect all around India for the Guru Granth Sahib Ji. And what does the government do? Absolutely nothing. It's like, as you say, Harpreet, the government is with the people who are doing such things. But, in the final sentence here, they're saying that Hindus are the victims. Yes, this really is the point. You steal, appropriate everything that's good about Sikhi and claim it for yourselves, but then you don't give anything back other than say, but we're the victims, despite us being 80% of the population of India and Sikhs, a tiny percentage. Is it something like 3%? It's the Hindus apparently that are the victims, despite the fact that you're appropriating Punjabi music, Punjabi culture, the Gurdwaras, taking advantage of the Gurdwaras, etc., etc. So that's the point that Harpreet's making. It is so true, and this is why there's so much frustration felt amongst Sikhs in India. And those that don't feel it, you need to wake up, because you are being taken advantage of. You're being taken for a ride, as we say here in the West. So good point. Hardal Singh, hello Hardal, one of our regulars. Amit Shah, I think your language is very euphemistic. That means it's understated. Is a hypocrite and sugar-coated. It's a lot worse than that, Hardal Singh. I think it's a lot worse. But anyway, you're a Sikh from Punjab, and you never forget 1984. As indeed, you must never forget 1984. As indeed, I talk so regularly about the events of 1984, whether it's Operation Blue Star, that outrageous assault on the centre of the Sikh faith, or the genocide that followed in October, November that year, where tens of thousands of men, women and children were massacred, tortured, burnt to death, gang raped, in the most awful, awful events. Which leads me on to Critics' Corner. This is a curious one. You claim you're a Sikh from Doaba region, and you suffered brainwashing in 1984 by Khalistanis, and, it's those Pakistan intelligence agents operatives. We Sikhs of Doaba, I hope I've pronounced that right, are highly educated and have common sense, really. But then you go and make this following statement. These Khalistanis created all the problems in 1984 and they call it a genocide by Congress, yet they're now accusing the BJP for that. Okay, it's not making a lot of sense, this. The genocide occurred in 1947 in Pakistan by, you call them Muslims, yet Khalistanis lick the watsits and shoes of Pakistan and Muslims. And then you talk about the British, Jallianwala Bagh massacre, back in 1920, and 200 years long killing by my forefathers who divided and ruled and enslaved Sikhs. Yet Khalistanis are sucking up to the English. So apparently I'm doing the same divide and rule. Khalistanis are hypocrites sold out to ISI Pakistan. There's a lot to unpack in this statement, in this comment. Thank you, BM, for your comment. Unfortunately, I have to profoundly disagree with just about everything in there. Apart from, yes, there was a divide and rule tactic by the British Empire. Yes, they did. That's how they were so successful. I don't deny that. But you talk about, and I think there's a clue here really to who you are and where you're from. Because you talk about, it's the Muslims, it's Pakistan. There's a whole Hindutva narrative in here. Now, my understanding of Sikhi, and this is backed up by evidence I even see today on social media, about the relationship between Muslims and Sikhs, is that Sikhs do not target or attack Muslims as a whole. They'll obviously call out things like grooming gangs and such, but Sikhs, and I see this regularly across social media even now, is that Sikhs are reaching out the hands of friendship to Muslims here in the UK, around the world, in the diaspora, and of course, indeed in India. So when you talk about divide and rule, Khalistanis are reaching out the hand of friendship, and yet you're talking about that they are the ones who are doing the divide and rule. They're not. Khalistanis are uniting, trying to unite Sikh people. And it's your prejudice, clearly, that drips out from the statement. Your prejudice against Muslims, and of course against Pakistan, is the narrative script of Hindutva, of the extremist nationalists of India. So what you are, you might be a Sikh from Doabar region. I don't know if that's true, but if you are, you essentially are aligning with the extremist nationalists of India, which I have to say, from my understanding of the Sikh faith and the Sikhs in Punjab, doesn't align with the Sikhs in Punjab. So you're obviously not a Khalistani, but that is your prerogative. That is your democratic right. But unfortunately, everything that you're talking about is absolute nonsense. First of all, Khalistanis didn't brainwash people of the Punjab in 1984. The only thing that happened in 1984 that you should have noticed was Operation Blue Star, where tens of thousands of innocent men, women and children, families, were killed by the Indian army, not just the martyrs like Bhindranwale, but pilgrims were killed by the Indian military. And 1984 October-November genocide, that you're talking about, it was brainwashing. Brainwashing wasn't massacring tens of thousands of children and women, gang raping women. There's no brainwashing there. The facts speak for themselves. The photographs, international global media covered a genocide that saw women murdered, gang raped, that saw men have tyres put around their bodies and set alight in front of their families, that had children killed in front of their mothers. That's not brainwashing. Those are facts perpetrated by, well, at the time it was Congress. Interesting point here. You're now saying that the Khalistanis are blaming the BJP. No, they're not. The Khalistanis and the Sikh, decent, normal Sikh people who remember and experience these atrocities are not just blaming Congress, they're blaming the Indian state, the Brahmanical elite, who you are defending. Again, I totally respect your right to believe in what you're saying. But everything you're saying here comes out of the Hindutva playbook. It's nonsense. It's the most twisted version of history that I've seen for ages. And just to remind you, the Khalistan movement is not funded or built or created by ISI or Pakistan. They might align with the ideals of it because it suits their purpose, but they're not behind it. The Khalistan movement is rooted all the way back to the Sikh Empire before Pakistan had ever even been thought of. So the Khalistan movement predates all this nonsense that you're talking about. So, and then as for the English, I can't defend the British Empire. We were the largest empire in history. That's nothing to do with me. They're my forefathers. I'm not responsible for it. But my divide and rule, there's only one entity that is creating division, and that is Hindutva, the people that you are aligning with. You should understand that. You are aligning with the only people who are dividing and ruling. That is the Indian government. They are dividing. Who's targeting Muslims that you are clearly against? Who's targeting Sikhs? Who? And Khalistanis, for example, who you are targeting. Divide and conquer is what the Indian government are doing. They're turning people like you against people that should be your friends. That's the definition of divide and rule, mate. So, BM, thank you for your comment, but, I'm sure my audience have got some responses to that. But anyway, it's good to see Critics Corner back. We do like critical comments. So do keep them coming. Let me encourage you. If you disagree with us, if you disagree with the whole Khalistan movement, let us know. But let us know why. Please explain. Don't just put rude comments. They're pointless. Explain why. And etc. Oh yeah, one point I did want to raise on this is that when we talk about, you said that first of all we blame Congress, then we blame the BJP. What it does imply, and what you've actually recognised without actually realising it, is that it doesn't matter. Excuse me. It doesn't matter what political colours these politicians wear, whether the Congress or BJP. They all are instruments, puppets of the Romanical elite. It's a bit like in many of our Western nations now, we have our political parties that are both two sides of the same coin. We have this in the UK now. The two main parties are two sides of the same coin that represent the globalists. It's the same here. There are two sides of the same coin in India. BJP and Congress still effectively represent the Brahmins. So it doesn't matter who wins, the Brahmins always win. That's really what it's all about. So that's a key point in your comment. James, hello, James, ProPix TV. That's James, for those who might want to know. Another great show. Good to see you back, James. Good to know that you're still watching us. As Soft2 Muffin says, we miss James. We do miss you, James. Hope you're keeping well. We do miss you. Ravi Kaur, we love you. You are the best channel. Well, thank you. I love you guys too, and this channel loves you guys. We couldn't do the show without you. So do keep watching. Do spread the word. We do need more people watching us. Soft2 Muffins pops straight back again with, if Sangat wants Saver, then share and like. Sat Guru, Satluj TV will be on our side. Please, all truck drivers like and share. Yeah, if you're a truck driver, tell more people to watch Satluj TV. We're fully behind you. We will keep fighting and advocating for your rights, for your CDLs, etc., etc. Bachan Kaur Bachan and Invisible Manav have the final say. Vahuguruji, Raj Khalsa, Khalistan, Punjab. What does Viot mean? I can't work out what this means. Can somebody tell me what Viot means? It's a Punjabi word, and I can't find a translation for it. Anyway, Sikhs for Justice, Zindabad, Kisan Hal, Khalistan, etc. Anyway, it's all about Khalistan, Zindabad. Those are the final words of the show. And I'm going to wrap up the show for today, for another day. Thank you for watching. Thanks. Do keep your comments coming in. Don't forget you can message, as many of you have been emailing me. Thank you. Send me links. Don't forget, I don't understand Punjabi, so if you send me a Punjabi link, you're going to have to explain what it's all about. But if you've got any other interesting links, send me links to stories that I should be covering, I should know about. Rumours, let me know any rumours or things that you might have heard about that I can do a bit of digging about, just to uncover stories. We're all about the truth. We are in the pursuit of truth. And it is up to me to bring that truth to you. So I need your help in doing that. So send me an email message at satludgetv.com or just put a comment in the comments section below. Always appreciated. Thank you for all your support. Thank you for all your lovely comments. I do appreciate them. They do really, as I say, keep me going on a daily basis. So thanks for that. Do spread the word. Get the word out that we exist. We need more people in the Punjab. We need more people in India to hear the truth. But of course, we need you guys out there in the diaspora as well. So spread the word. Get people to watch us. That's very much appreciated. But that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. God willing, I will see you tomorrow.